Hey folks, John Becker here, former state representative from Claremont County, bringing to you the August edition of the Becker Report. So the Becker Report's my monthly newsletter you can find at www.beckergop.com and click on the Becker Report. You can also subscribe there and don't forget to also subscribe to my YouTube channel. So I'm just going to review with you kind of briefly what's in the August issue, and it's primarily about COVID. And this issue is, I guess I want to say it is devoted to explaining to the CDC and Governor DeWine and others who are just curious about or kind of scratching their head wondering, what is wrong with those people? When I say those people, I mean the people who are resistant to wearing masks, maybe concerned about the vaccine, maybe just don't believe what the government is telling us. Well, there's a reason for that. And if you look at the August issue of the Becker Report, I kind of review what I think a lot of people are going to agree with. That, yeah, these are legitimate concerns. At least the government's not doing a good job to alleviate these concerns, and that's because of a credibility problem. And that's kind of, well, what I lead with actually in the Becker Report is my campaign for trustee coming up in November, and I'll expand on that probably next month. But this issue is mostly about COVID. And it starts with a credibility issue of the CDC. I'm just going to kind of review it with you, and not necessarily line by line, just kind of summarize some of the paragraphs anyway. So the first thing I start with is really ICD10 codes. So I used to work in the healthcare industry. It was on the insurance side of things. And back in the day, it was ICD-9 codes. What those are diagnostic codes. So those diagnostic codes, there's procedure codes. In these diagnostic codes, we had a primary, secondary, and a tertiary. So if you were, if you were in the hospital or doctor's office or whatever, you got everybody got a diagnosis code, and it was for whatever you were in for. Now there might be a secondary or tertiary IC9 code as well to identify other issues or concerns that were not or were less than primary. So the issue here is the ICD-10 codes for COVID. What we don't know, because the CDC is not telling us, and we know that they know, is how many of these so-called COVID patients that are in the hospitals, how many are in because of COVID rather than just happens by coincidence to be in with COVID. So we know if you're in for a heart attack, if you're in for, you fell off a ladder, or you had an automobile accident, a gunshot wound, whatever, and then coincidentally you tested for COVID and maybe had no idea you even had COVID, which would make sense since most people with COVID or whoever had it, they don't know they ever had it, and they had zero symptoms or perhaps mild symptoms. But we do know all the reports are saying, yeah, if you're in the hospital and you tested positive, and for that matter, the test could be wrong, then you are a COVID patient. So this is part of the credibility problem with the CDC. They're not telling us who is really a COVID patient. They just call everybody a COVID patient without regard to why they're in the hospital. That's part of the problem. Also, of course, you have the issue of the comorbidities and the pre-existing conditions. So, we talked about, how, or they've talked about how the people who are most susceptible to COVID or dying from COVID are tend to be older people and people with comorbidities. Well, they're really not talking about that anymore. And I think it probably has to do with, really very few people are dying from COVID anymore. And that's certainly a good thing. And no doubt the vaccine has gone a long way to solving that problem. So there's also the credibility of the mask issue. So the CDC's own data, and I link to this in the Becker report, so it's easy to find, says that their mask efficacy is less than 2%. Less than 2% is the efficacy of masks. And based on that, they're trying to tell us that it should be mandated and worn. I really think they should take a different approach to this and just say, hey, look, wear a mask. We think it's a good idea just to remind you and to remind others that the COVID virus is serious, and you need to be taking precautions, especially for those who are vulnerable. And those vulnerable are older people and people with the comorbidities, pre-existing conditions of some sort. But please stop telling us they actually stop a virus, because that's ridiculous, and it's ridiculous, and your own data shows that it's ridiculous. Then I get into about the vaccine. So There was the previous director of the CDC. I think his name was Redfern. So he got on video, and I linked to this video. He got on TV, and this was during a hearing with in the I'm not sure which committee it was in Washington, but he was in a hearing testifying, and he was saying that the masks are more effective than the vaccines. So again, we're back to credibility. So we know the masks are ineffective, and the CDC saying they're more effective than vaccines. Then what does that tell us about the vaccines? Then I get into, okay, so these vaccines were developed kind of in a whirlwind approach. And, I saw a chart, I don't have it linked on here, maybe I will before this is final, is, so, we know there's been multiple diseases over the years. I mean, you think of AIDS, for example, where no vaccine has ever been developed. And we know they've certainly spent bazillions of dollars attempting to develop a cure and certainly have treatments. But there is no cure and there's no prevention in terms of a vaccine. So, and there's multiple other vaccines which have taken years to develop. So this COVID vaccine they developed in a whirlwind amount of time, and using this new technology, mRNA or whatever it's called. So that's another reason people are concerned and maybe don't trust the vaccine. So maybe they should, but these are the reasons people are coming up with of why they're hesitant. And I think it's very understandable about that hesitancy. Also, you have to consider the risk and the long-term risks of the vaccine. So there was no animal trials. The long-term risk is certainly unknown. The short-term risk is debated. We certainly know there's problems that have developed from the vaccine. How widespread that is questionable, and or how rare it may be. But those are out there, and what's also concerning is the censorship going on about trying to shut down the voices of concern and the people who have data that contradicts CDC data. So it's like, well, if you don't fit the narrative, then we shut you down and we censor you. And that's what's been going on out there, and it sounds like a whole lot like 1984. And that again, that's a part of the problem. So then I get into a section. This is a laugh line called should we trust Governor DeWine? And so that has to do with he's saying the lockdowns are required to flatten the curve. And yeah, we'd only have to lock down for, what do you say, 2 weeks or something like that. And I keep hearing that joke again about, we just need people to wear masks for 2 weeks and blah, 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 blah. So we know historically that this is not true. It was never true throughout the history of the world about the lockdown somehow being able to stop the spread of virus. The only thing that stops the spread of virus is somehow through herd immunity, which may occur naturally and may occur through vaccinations or some combination of the two. So then I get into the final section here called insanity. So insanity is about these. So I've seen Governor DeWine, for example. There was a photo of him, and this was legit, where he was in a meeting someplace, and somebody took a photo from outside, standing outside, and there's this a sign that says a mask must be worn. And then the governor's inside not wearing a mask. Well, he had a bunch of people gathered around him, and it was a Q&A type of thing, and all that's fine and good. So why wasn't the governor wearing the mask? Well, in the mind of the governor and others, it's ridiculous to wear a mask when you're speaking or trying to answer questions or have casual conversation at a dinner table or what have you. Okay, so let me get this straight. So viruses can spread if you're just sitting around minding your own business, just simply breathing. But if you're having a casual conversation with somebody, or you're speaking into a microphone, or you're answering questions, some kind of Q&A forum, then the virus can't spread. So if that's logical to anybody, please let me know, because I'm really having trouble with that. And then the final thing I have about insanity has to do with the hospitals, now saying that they're going to require, as a condition of employment, people to get this vaccine. Well, I guess we can debate, though. One thing is if it's right or wrong for them to do that as a condition of employment. Frankly, I think it's the wrong thing to do. But if you're going to be complaining that you have staffing issues And that's part of the problem with COVID is that they just don't have enough people to staff the ICUs and these facilities. Okay, I get that, but you're going to require people get a vaccine as a condition of employment. So you're going to fire people or encourage them to switch fields, retire early, or whatever to increase your staffing problem because you want to mandate a vaccine that a lot of people have legitimate concerns about. And by the way, it kind of makes you wonder, why do so many in the health community that work for hospitals and such, why don't they get the vaccine if it's so safe? I mean, the people who would know the best are very concerned. So what does that tell you? Well, and it tells people like me that, yeah, maybe there's reason to be concerned about all this. I don't know. So, so the purpose of this report, the August edition of the Becker report is just kind of let you know what the concerns are that I'm hearing out there and why these concerns exist, and maybe you should consider addressing those concerns. So again, this is John Becker. My contact information is at the end of this video. Have a good day. Bye-bye.